welcome to Connects Live. And today we have special guest Steve Simpson. He's going to talk to us about UGRs. If you don't know what UGRs are, Steve is up today really early down there in Australia. It's 3:30 in the morning. And I just appreciate you so much getting up early to chat with us and wearing a pink shirt and everything. Steve, welcome. Tell us about yourself and a little bit about your background before we jump into the whole UGR thing.
Thanks, Mark. It's a treat to be here and fascinating listening to the conversation just now about musical bands and them repeating their stuff in repeat shows. So just a word of warning, after you've seen me today, there's no need to ever see me again because this is, okay, so I might be the same. Look, I'm based in Melbourne in Australia, and Mark, with our time zone changes in between when we first talked, which was a few months ago, and now, we realised too late that the time zone changes in that time because we went off daylight saving. I don't know if you guys have daylight saving.
Yeah, we do.
We originally thought it was going to be 5:30 for me, but it is actually 3:30 in the morning. So apologies for any stumbling that my brain might experience because of the time right now. So Mark, look, background, I started as a teacher. I travelled at age 25, having never been overseas before, to Canada. Went to Edmonton, Alberta, and did a master's degree. By the way, I flew in to Edmonton on the 3rd of January because I was working with the Education Department in Western Australia at the time. They would only give me a calendar year because our school year is the calendar year. They'd only give the calendar year leave for me. So I flew in to Edmonton, never having seen snow before, on the 3rd of January. Went back to Australia after completing my master's, spent 5 years in head office of the Education Department in Western Australia. And then at around age 30, I quit and started my own business. So I sort of became a consultant speaker before it was fashionable, because it's not unusual now, is it? But it was then. And have been working with organisations over that time to start off with mainly in the area of customer service, but I quite quickly swung to the notion of culture, and that's where the UGRs concept was born. And so that's it in a nutshell, Mark.
That's fascinating. So the idea of culture, I've heard that, what is it? A culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? There's that one, and there's corporate cultures just can't be copied. I mean, there's some that it's just part of their family makeup, if you will. So how'd you dig into corporate culture, and how do you understand that across a myriad of types of corporations? Family business all the way to whoever.
Well, it started out. There's two things at play here. One is I was working in the area of customer service, and I was not doing the frontline stuff. I was saying, how do you get a service ethic through an organisation? And I realised that some of my work in the customer service space was having a big impact in some organisations and pretty close to zero impact in others. And I was reflecting, why is that the case? And then it dawned on me, it was the culture of that organisation that was dramatically impacting the extent to which there was traction and take-up of the stuff that I was offering. And then I'd been invited to facilitate a series of sessions on different topics, interestingly for school administrative teams, for school leaders. And I was young and bulletproof. I didn't even look at the topics. I just said, not a problem, I can do that. And then I realised that one of the topics was on culture. And so I went back to the books that I'd studied in Alberta, and I realised that what I'd read was so academic, so theoretical, it just didn't seem to have a practical feel. So I decided I'm not going to present that stuff back. And that's when I created the UGRs concept. UGRs stands for unwritten ground rules, which I define as people's perceptions of this is the way we do things around here. And that definition, Mark, is vitally important. People's perceptions of this is the way we do things around here. They can include things like, at our meetings it isn't worth complaining because we know nothing will get done. The only time anyone gets spoken to by the boss is when something is wrong, and so on. So these drive our behaviour, yet they are seldom talked about openly. it's quite extraordinary when you think about it. So it's my contention that it is the UGRs that are your culture. Culture is merely people's perceptions of this is the way we do things around here. So we understand UGRs and we understand culture. I think it's as simple to understand as that. I think too many people overcomplicate this whole notion of culture. I don't think it's complex to understand. It's complex to change, but I think it's as simple to understand that. And by the way, I think that can provide a bit of a breakthrough, because I think many leaders know that their culture might not be as good as it can be, but what you don't understand, you don't manage, and what you don't manage, you become victims of. And I think many leaders feel victims of their culture, knowing it could be better, but feeling a little unclear as to what to do about it. So that's the UGRs in a nutshell, Mark.
So how do you go about identifying UGRs at a fairly large company? Let's say Qantas or something. How do you go about identifying the culture, the UGRs in particular? You know.
Well, this is where we had a breakthrough more than 20 years ago, because I got two Australian universities involved in doing world first research into UGRs. And to be honest with you, we stumbled across this method, this approach, which I think is a revelation to reveal the prevailing UGRs. What we did is, in our research, and we had 5 companies involved in this research, we got people anonymously to complete the sentence, to what we now call lead-in sentences. So for example, in our research, Mark, we got people to reflect on the way we do things around here and to complete this sentence. Around here, customers are. Now, would you like to predict some of the responses we got to that?
Huh.
Because I can
Yeah, but it's by department even. I mean, you would think, some people don't even see them. It's like, that's interesting.
we got stuff back, which was gobsmacking. We got stuff back around here, customers are a pain in the neck. Actually, I'm censoring that because it was worse than that, but you get the drift. We literally had one person write, around here, customers are an interruption to my working day. I kid you not, we literally got that. Now, we realised at that point, each of these companies had wonderful documentation proclaiming their commitment to customer service. What a load of rubbish if they're the prevailing UGRs. In our research, we got people to complete this lead-in sentence as well. We said, around here, if you criticise your boss, one person wrote CLM, career limiting move. So we realised that we were actually onto something, and in that time we've got a little smarter, and what we do now is we say, well, there's a first step that companies should first take, and that is, let's get clear about our aspirational culture. What's the kind of culture that we need in place? In a customer experience context, we could say, for us to genuinely deliver a fantastic customer experience, what does our culture need to look and feel like? And we need clarity and commitment around that aspirational culture, because once that's firmed up, by the way, our values sometimes answer that question. Once that's firmed up, we can then craft lead-in sentences to link to those aspects of our culture that we're fighting for. I'll give you an example. If we're fighting for teamwork, for example, I wonder how your people would complete this sentence. Around here when you need help, or around here when it comes to dealing with people from other work areas. If we have constant improvement as a cultural attribute we want to fight for, I wonder how your people would complete this sentence. Around here when someone comes up with a new idea. It's interesting, Mark, that when we compile these lead-in sentences, by the way, it should total no more than 10, but we've done this for many organisations for many years. We craft these specifically for their aspirational culture. So we call this tool a UGR's stock take. Now, I know stock take is not a term that's commonly used in the US. Inventory would be a comparable word. So we call it a UGR's stock take or inventory. And we've included the lead-in sentence around here when someone comes up with a new idea quite often in these stock takes or inventories. It's not been uncommon to come across somebody who writes words like this. And I'm serious about this. And this is enormously powerful when you think about it. Around here, when someone comes up with a new idea, bosses pinch the good ones and use them as their own. Now, think about the power of that. Because
Yeah.
if that's my UGR, whether my UGR is warranted and valid is irrelevant. That's my perception. That's going to drive my behavior. So a person who has that UGR is going to go to a meeting. The boss or any person at that meeting is going to say, any ideas on how we can improve this? I've got one. There is no way I'm going to share it because my UGR is driving my behavior. So doing this inventory or stock take can be enormously powerful. And look, just to add one final thing, when we do this, we can include demographics. So for example, we did one across Kmart, Australia and New Zealand. Now, Kmart is a discount department store, same name, but not affiliated with the US version. And they've got 30,000 people. And so we included a demographic that collected each store. So the respondent's store that they belong to, and we gave each store manager their own report. And most stores have got 100 to 150 people in it. So each store got their own report. And each store had their different culture represented through different responses to their UGR's stock take. I'll pause there, Mark, because I'm going on a bit too long.
No, I love it. I was just kind of curious. As a qualitative researcher, I love these kinds of questions being open-ended like this. So I'm kind of curious when you apply it to a large organization like a Kmart, you have to quantify it at some point to even make sense of it, I would think. So have you done that, or is there a process for that, or what do you think about that?
I'm glad you raised that, Mark, because I omitted to share one thing, because when we do this, and by the way, this can be done face to face. I've done this in a room with 50 or 100 or even 500 people in the room. What we do when we do the online version of this is we have an open text box, so it's free range text. We call it a stock take or an inventory deliberately. We want to avoid the use of the term survey because there are UGRs to do with surveys. And it goes like this. Every year we have a survey, nothing happens as a consequence, so why bother to treat it seriously? So we deliberately, it feels different, it looks different. There's an open text box. Remember, preferably no more than 10 lead-in sentences. Next to each text box, we have a tick box. And we get people to self-categorize their response as having a positive, neutral, or negative impact on the organisation overall. So now we've got two forms of data. We've got the quantitative, which is a percentage breakdown of positive, neutral, and negative responses, plus the qualitative, which is the positive comments bunched up together as a group, then the neutrals, and then the negatives. And so we've got the two forms of data. And by the way, the richness is in the words. You know, we get people to read the words and identify the major themes across those words, and it's so rich and so much of a revelation to people. We are seeing the world through other people's eyes, and that's a rare opportunity. It's an amazing thing.
On the employee engagement side alone, I think it's fascinating that you can get their participation on this. But I'm wondering, is there any kind of alignment you could do as well with customers to answer the same thing and say, here's what we think of ourselves, but here's what customers are thinking about the same question, to see if that UGR is like seeping through to other people, right, to the customers.
Mark, look, short answer is no. We've not done this from a customer perspective, but this whole thing can be angled towards a customer focus. Look, for years, pre-COVID, I used to do a lot of conference presentations, and I used to share a quote, and I could never find out the source. And to this day, I've still never been able to find it. So I'm going to claim this as my quote. The quote goes like this. It says, "I know of no organisation renowned for its commitment to customer service that simultaneously abuses its internal customers. The task of customer service begins within." So we've got to get our culture right. And we know this. We've got to get the culture right in order for us to maximise the potential we can give to our customers. And so there is a customer service angle on this. And that we can frame our question, our initial question, around customer experience, customer service, and say, what culture do we need in place for us to truly be able to deliver a genuinely, I can't get the question right, but a genuine point of difference with our customer experience. And if we can articulate the culture that's necessary for that, then everything can flow from that. We can craft a UGR stock take to link to that and really work on getting the internal things, the culture right within our organisation.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions. Carl, come on up and ask what you'd like with Steve.
Oh, fascinating stuff here. So yeah, my question was, could I perhaps construct my own cultural assessment with 10 statements that I came up with to finish in the manner that which you described, or is there more or less some standard set that you would recommend or adhere to? I mean, because it couldn't just be just any 10 statements. There's got to be some that are like more or less sacred givens. I'm thinking.
Yeah, Carl, it's a good question. Our argument is that the starting point is to get clarity around our aspirational culture. That should be the anchor point from which we generate the lead-in sentences. So that can be the values of your organisation. If you want to go beyond customer experience, we can go. See, our question that we ask when we're not specifically in a customer experience context, our question is this: what are the key cultural attributes we need in place for us to truly be successful while making this a great place to work? Put more simply, the question is this: what does our culture need to look and feel like for us to truly be successful while making this a great place to work? Now, we are talking in a customer experience context here. So my argument is that we can reframe that question to link back to customer experience if we want. But nonetheless, the anchor point should be a question like that. Now, once we've got those cultural attributes firmed up and we agree on them, then we can craft the lead-in sentence. Now, I will say this, Carl, there is an art and a science to crafting quality lead-in sentences. To be honest with you, I've struggled and I still can't come up with what it is that constitutes a good lead-in sentence. But here's what I know. We've got to be careful to avoid inviting a definition. So I'll give you an example. A poor lead-in sentence is, around here quality is, because that is merely inviting a definition rather than a reflection of this is the way we do things around here. So if any of you want to play with this yourselves, I'm more than happy to help you. And you can email me and I'm happy to help provide some comment back to you about whether I think your lead-in sentences are good ones or not. More than happy to do that. My email is steve@ugrs.net for UGRs, ugrs.net. I'm more than happy if you want to play in this space to help you get the lead-in sentences right, because that's vital. That's vital. Getting those lead-in sentences right, because getting the opportunity to tap into seeing the world through other people's eyes, you can't do that too often, and it's a rare opportunity and provides gold when you get it right.
Anyway,
by the way, confronting gold. I mean, often the stuff that you get back will be confronting, and you're aware of this. But my argument is, so what's the alternative? Yeah. If we're serious about going in this path, what's the alternative here? Yeah.
Excellent.
No, actually, appreciate the answer. Thank you.
We have another couple questions here. Let's see, Patty, let's get you up here.
I think this is absolutely fascinating, and I do understand the connection between what you're talking about and the customer experience, and believe that there is a direct correlation between that. And so my question is really about, how do you handle those that struggle with this, with the process of it, and particularly those, because there's people in the C-suite who struggle with it, and there are people that are team members, frontline members, things like that, and they struggle with it. So I was wondering how you work to overcome those types of situations.
Patty, just by way of explanation, when you're talking about people who struggle with it, can you help me understand that a little more?
So people in the C-suite may struggle finding the value in this. So it's a double-edged question. So the people in the C-suite may struggle finding the value in it, and the team member may struggle in trusting the process.
I get you, Patty. Thank you. I get it. Okay. So 2 parts to the answer. Number one, I think many leaders have yet to identify. Many people say the words, but have actually not connected the dots in their own mind. So I think it's legitimate. It's a legitimate question to say, what's the business case for culture? And I think many people are talking culture, but haven't connected the dots in their own mind. So we did some research a while back, and we stumbled across this question, which I now think is a terrific question. The question is this: if the culture of our workplace was to become as good as it realistically could, how much improvement would there be on people's performance/productivity? Now, in our research, we gave people a sliding scale. Started at 0. 0 is a legitimate answer. You might think the culture now, realistically, is as good as it's going to get. So 0 is legitimate. And then we gave people a sliding scale, 10%, 20%, up to 100, and then 100% plus. So, Patty, what I do now, whenever I get in front of a leadership team and I think it's the appropriate time, I will ask that question. And I say, I'm going to show you the results we got from our research in a moment. Before I do, put a percentage on it for our organisation. If you put a percentage on it, what do you think? And I repeat, 0 is a legitimate answer, right? I am gobsmacked to this day about how consistently I get such a similar response from leaders. Typically, the average is around 40%, 40. I say to people, get excited. Through what other initiative or change program could we possibly hope to get performance improvement of that magnitude? Get excited, because what you're saying is that there is substantial performance improvement that rests at our feet. It is the culture of our workplace. Now, I think that presents an incredibly powerful business case for culture. Now, the second bit, how do you get staff involved in this and trusting the process? All you can say is, this is completely anonymous. There is no way for us, and we say this to people when we do it, there is no way for us to identify who said what. Now, you know what? Despite the doubts that people have, despite those proclamations, we still are able to get honest responses. We never get a situation where 100% of the responses are positive. I just think the free text is freeing up of people. It just feels different. If you can just picture in your minds what it might look like. Lead in sentence, open text box. Lead in sentence, open text box. There's no Likert scales. It's just free text, go for it. And then they self-categorize their response with a tick box next to each text box. It just feels different. And I think the process itself is encourages people to be open and honest. By the way, we also get differentiation. So one person will be very negative on one aspect, but positive on another, which tells us that they're treating it seriously and they're being honest.
Fascinating. Great. I want Amy Zindi, you have one more question coming up, and then we're going to go into some open networking after this. So, Amy?
Yeah, walking and chewing gum at the same time. Okay, great conversation. Sorry, my video seems to not be working. Steve, would you talk a little bit about what you do to set the terms so that employees trust the process? How do you conduct that anonymously? What kind of participation do you get? Do you address the employees first? Just, talk a little bit about establishing trust and explaining the process, because I'm sure you don't want to show your hand too much to employees to load the deck,
Amy, the benefit of us being involved is that we are independent. So we argue that case. We say this is being done by an independent firm. And we merely say, I mean, I don't know how you can make it any stronger than this, but we merely make it clear that this will be anonymous, and there is no way that we are able to identify who has said what. That's as strong as we play it, and that's all we can do. Participation rate varies. So as far as process is concerned, obviously we need to speak with the senior leadership team involved in this first to get them on board. they've got to be on board. And so we say to the senior leaders, oh, by the way, when we do this, we give daily reports of the number of people who've responded. And to the extent we collect demographics, so for example, we can collect the respondent's division or their physical location or whatever, and we can give daily reports on the number of people who've responded, broken down by whatever demographics we collect. So we can give daily reports on that. If we follow our process and we've spoken with the leaders first, then the leaders are encouraging their people to respond as well. So the leaders get access to the progress reports on the number of people who've responded. And we've had some companies that have had a competition that, you know, to get the highest percentage of responses. We want leaders to be positively motivated to get their people to provide responses, and they can tell their people, guys, we've had 37% of you respond. We'd really appreciate it if more of you could find the time. Providing space for people to respond. So we really want to get leader support for this. And another motivator is that our ideal process involves providing the results back to leaders, but then also providing the results back to all staff, where we do a few things in this session. We share with the staff an introduction to UGRs and how they drive people's behaviour. That's vital because some of your people are subscribing to negative UGRs right now, but doing so unconsciously. So we find that in teaching people about UGRs, they are forced then to make a conscious choice, and many will question their own behaviour once they become conscious of this. And then we share the results from the stock take, getting their views on what we can do to make improvements to any areas of concern from the stock take. We want to create excitement about this. We want to create shared ownership for the culture. If there is a silver bullet with changing culture, and I doubt there is, but if there is one, it is that. We want to get shared ownership. Some of your people are subscribing to negative UGRs and taking a cop-out position, saying if only they'd fix things up, we'd be okay. That's a cop-out. Leaders are responsible, but not primarily responsible. So we want to get shared ownership and excitement about the prospects of being involved in a positive, dynamic, productive, team-oriented culture, because the vast majority of your people want their culture to be like that. So we can create real excitement about this, get them involved, get them owning the results, get them questioning their own behaviours. And once that starts, it becomes unstoppable.
Maybe you identify the sacred cow and sacrifice it as well, right?
Well, you know, the act of going through this process, I think, is seen by employees. You know, I'm working with a law firm in the UK right now, and Sarah, the CEO, has copped a lot of criticism in this stock take. She said, do not take my words, take my name out of the reports when she's been named. Now that takes massive courage, because that's then shared with people to see, you know, and people are, now I don't necessarily recommend that. I think where names are named, we'd redact, right? Out of respect for those people. And that's the right thing to do. But the process of being transparent, even with redactions, because people understand the need to redact when that's done. But the process of being transparent, I think, is understood by everyone involved, and I think progress can be made on the culture simply by going through the process and sharing the outcomes, you know. Because what happens with surveys often is the results disappear into a black hole, never to be seen again. So we want to get the results out really quickly, shared with people within the context of teaching them about UGRs, and there's no stopping it.
I love it. Well, Steve, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, and taking time out at, what is it now, 4 in in Melbourne. What we're going to do now is we're going to, as usual on Wednesdays, we go into networking sessions. So for those of you who are watching the recording, if you were here live, you would be now meeting at least another 15 or so people. And do join us every Wednesday here. We'll be back again next Wednesday, and every Wednesday, 1:30 Eastern. My name is Mark Michelson. If you would like to get in touch with us, it's cxforums.org is the website, and we are planning a lot of events, including in-person meetings coming up this September in Boston. and then one every month following that. So with all that, Audrey, take us out.